But good morning and welcome to the Commercial Forum. I am David Pierce, your 2025 Commercial Chair, along with my co-chair, Tom Witt, the guy in the back with the gear. He doesn't like being up here. Along with our staff liaison, Annalisa Morano and Suzanne Brown, who make all this happen for us here today. All right. Now, Christina, but we want to also recognize Helena Donahue, Marty Linich, and Christina as well. If we only have Christina here. Oh, Helena's hiding over here somewhere. Oh, there she is. Sorry. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for your continued support. You've been wonderful marketing partners for many, many years, which has helped grow this into what it is today.
Well, it is my honor and privilege to get to introduce Thomas Maynard today, the GPEC Senior Vice President of Business Development. He's been with GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, since August 2013. I think it was straight out of middle school? Yeah, kind of. Thomas co-manages the business development team, oversees GPEC's international business attraction efforts. And over the years, he's worked with hundreds of companies evaluating Greater Phoenix, ranging from Fortune 500 companies to startups. He's currently serving, I didn't know this, but this is so wonderful, as an honorary commander, a unique program that pairs community members with leaders from Luke Air Force Base. He also serves on NAIOP's Developing Leaders Steering Committee. He was named to the 2020 list of North America's top 50 economic developers and was recognized a 40 under 40 economic developer in class of 2021. Are you still under 40? Almost. Yeah. Thomas is an Arizona native, grew up in Tucson, don't hold it against him, graduated from ASU. Yeah, with a degree in journalism from a focus in public relations. He lives in Phoenix with his wife, Mo, and French bulldog, Hugo. And we're very glad to have you here today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. I'll go through some slides, but we'll also want to keep this open and conversational. So again, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So before I jump into the slides, quick commercial on GPEC and who we are if you're not familiar. So GPEC is Greater Phoenix Economic Council. We are the regional economic development entity. We've been around since 1989. We represent all of Maricopa County and Pinal County. There's 22 cities and towns that formally make up GPEC. The cities are about a third of our operational funding, and then 2/3 of our budget come from, give or take, 200 mostly private sector companies that are invested in our mission. And our mission is quite simply to help grow the Greater Phoenix economy, primarily through attracting businesses from out of town. And that's the team that I sit on, and we'll talk a lot about that, of the companies that are coming here, why they're choosing Arizona, what are things that we need to be worried about, what we can be working on, and then also advocating for the competitiveness of the region to make sure that we don't just continue to attract companies today, but into the future. So that's who we are. Been around for a long time. The presentation today will be kind of in two parts. The first part would be a little bit more macroeconomic, trends. What are we seeing? Where does Arizona fit against the national landscape? And then we'll dive into our business development pipeline. And then I'll pause and happy to answer any questions that you all may have. So yeah, let's jump into the numbers. So this is the GDP, both for region, state, and then against the national average. Yeah, feel free to take pictures. I'll also share these slides afterwards. So if you don't get a picture, no worries. The call out and talking point on this, you'll notice from a GDP growth perspective, we are actually outpacing the national average. Those of you who have been in the market for a while, if we rewound the clock, went back to 2008, we were not outpacing the national average in anything other than maybe foreclosures or, things that unemployment rate, things like that. So I think just take a step back and put into context of where we are. Again, there's a lot of positive things that have happened over the last decade and a half to get us to this point. If you look at wage growth, this is another metric that we track, pretty closely. We're actually lagging the national average in terms of our wage growth. These numbers are lagging, and where we pull this data from, you'll see in a few slides the types of companies that we are attracting. that gives us some positive momentum to this talking point in particular. But again, good to note, that, from the types of jobs that we were attracting maybe the last couple of years, we're actually, lagging the national average. Employment overall, I mean, we had that dip in COVID. Nobody knew what was going to happen. As you can see, we very quickly recovered all of our job losses from COVID. We are now have a very healthy 3.1% unemployment rate. Anything lower than that, you get to that 2% rate or lower. It's hard enough to hire, talent as it is in today's landscape. So if you get down to that level, that just makes it much, much harder. And then if you get over to the 5-6% unemployment rate, that obviously has some negative, impacts to your economy. So we're in that nice Goldilocks zone from an unemployment rate, and continue to see a lot of net new job growth and net new population growth that's kind of keeping that in balance. This next slide, I think is important to kind of put into context. And it's a little bit of an eye chart, but what this represents is the makeup of the industries in the region. So if you just ask the person on the street, what are the big industries in Phoenix, you'd probably hear today semiconductor, which makes sense. They're making a lot of the headlines. You'll hear probably aerospace and defense, finance and insurance, and all those are accurate, but you'll see that professional and business services are actually our largest chunk of our employment rate. Also, if you look at the healthcare and kind of social assistance, that industry is also a major driver of our employment. What's important to note on this slide as well, if we rewound the clock and went back to 2008, what you would notice in here is this construction piece right here, which is 7%, was way outpacing things like manufacturing and some of these other utilities. Long story short, the industries that were driving us back then were the commercial, or the housing, residential, real estate market and construction. So we're much more diversified as a market, which is a great thing. So if and when we get into the next recession, and maybe we were talking to, maybe we're already in a recession, we're going to be in a much better position than we were back then. And that was not by accident. There was a lot of intentional efforts that have happened to ensure the market can be much more diversified. Inflation rates, this was always a big topic of conversation probably for the last 2 years, but now, as you can see, we had that big spike, call it end of 2022, and now we're kind of almost back to that 2% inflation rate target. So I think obviously people in this room are well aware of this and what's happening at the Fed and what those interest rates are going to look like. I think we're all waiting on that, but we're moving in the right direction in terms of inflation, which is a positive sign. We like to point out this slide because this is, for us, context is always important. And if you talk to, go ahead.
I know, it's so important.
Yeah. The people, you ask again, the normal person on the street, and you say, is it affordable to live in Phoenix? And you can talk to somebody that just moved from San Francisco, and they're like, absolutely, it's affordable to live in Phoenix. There might be other people that have lived here for a long time and say, oh no, of course not. This is, what's going on? It's prices are going out of control. So this is actually a good slide to put up, just to put to context. So to tell you what is on this slide, this is the overall cost of living index. So we're at 107.2, meaning we're 7.2% over the national average. Historically, Phoenix has always been kind of plus or minus that national average, right at 100. Sometimes it's 98, sometimes it's 102. So yes, we're slightly higher than where we were historically. But let's put that important context in place. I mean, we put the New York, San Francisco, LA's just to throw it out there, to see, okay, remember, could be worse. We also look at some of our peer markets that you would compare us to. Portland, Salt Lake City, Denver. They're actually on the other side. They're least, not as affordable as Phoenix. There's other markets that are doing a little bit better. The Texas market. Texas is a very, very low taxation state. They are a cheaper market. Albuquerque, New Mexico is a cheaper market. I would make the argument they're a little bit more dynamic than Albuquerque, New Mexico. But again, just important context of where we stand. And now it may be relevant to the folks in this room, and I have a few more slides on this. What's driving this 107 number? It's this housing column. So housing, we're 16% over the national average from a housing cost perspective. So that is easier said than done to try. How do we fix that? And again, you all may know better than I what's driving a lot of that. There's a lot of supply and demand issues, not building enough housing. that's driving that. We're moving in the right direction on that, but it's just important context to know of kind of what are the key factors for that. Housing prices, we had that peak. I guess this was when 2022, 2023, we have leveled off a bit. As you can see, it hasn't come down. We're still kind of in maybe quote unquote this new normal since February 2023. Again, just important context to figure out kind of where we are as a market. And then this chart is the housing affordability, meaning what if you make the median wage in the county, in the jurisdiction that you live in, can you purchase the median home price? So our national average is 36%. We're at 38%. So we are, a little bit worse than the national average, but we're basically right on in terms of, take a little bit more of our income to purchase that median income price, but it's not too far off from the national average. So I guess if you do run into that person in the street, it's so unaffordable to live in Arizona, so unaffordable to live in Phoenix. You have somewhat of a point, but it's not as drastic as some may take it. Real estate is obviously very much a local issue too, right? It depends on where you're living. North Scottsdale, Paradise Valley is way different than some other parts of the market. So, nuance and context is important. But again, this is just some important data that we kind of put a bigger story of what's really going on. So I'll shift now. That's all of the macroeconomic, policy of what we're looking at. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I know it's just like, don't ask over and over, but affordable housing, people still ask, is that still on the table? Just something to talk about?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question was about affordable housing, the kind of topic and issue of affordable housing. Is that still an issue? Do people still talk about it? The short answer is yes. I mean, housing is very much a local issue. We represent 22 cities and towns. There's probably 22 different viewpoints on how those cities and towns want to build out their community. So we respect that. But if you do look at just macroeconomics, we are 5 million people, give or take, as a metro region. We're going to 6 million people in the next 10 to 15 years. So as we continue to grow, we needed to ensure that we have housing options for all income levels. Now, we're not going to be the ones that say, hey, Paradise Valley, you need to put low rent apartments on your street corner. That's not for us to say. That's for the market to dictate. What our job is here's where the economy is going. Here's the types of industries that are attracted to the greater Phoenix area, and give those cities all the data input that they need to make their best decisions. And the good news is our local economic development, folks, and some of these people that you may know are some of the top in the business. They know what they're doing. They're very, very sophisticated, and they have that understanding of, hey, we need to ensure that we can grow today and also into the future. But yeah, the sorry for the cop-out answer, but the answer really is it's very much a local issue, and every city kind of has their own strategy of how they want that. Yes.
Hey, with our major employment being healthcare and professionals, which are typically higher paying jobs, why are we lagging?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll show you a slide here in a little bit. Part of that is those wage numbers are from, they're always lagging in terms of where you get the data. So there might be a couple of years old. So there's this dynamic of like, well, if we, even things like the COVID, bailout monies that went across all the states, like income levels went up across the national, landscape. So they could be even like artificially boost as opposed to what we have. Again, what you're seeing in our data will be like what's coming, which gives us some positive reaction on that. But yeah, part of it is just the timing of where that data comes out, and also it just might be companies are also still moving to Arizona because it's more affordable. Yeah. They are moving from California and other markets where they can pay a lower rate. All right, business development update. So this is again looking at our specific timeline or pipeline. Companies that are moving here. That's what we focus on, almost exclusively office and industrial and out of state. People that are not currently in Arizona that are looking to expand here. Our fiscal year ends next week, June 30. So this is actually a good snapshot of what our entire pipeline looks like. A few key callouts. One, we're 10% over our pre-year goal. Those are for new prospects, new companies that are entering into the pipeline, evaluating Arizona. That I think is significant. If you look at this last fiscal year, what happened? We had a federal administration change. So you basically punted everything from November when the administration changed. December was kind of this lame duck session. Inauguration was in January. There was a lot of our project pipeline was dependent on a lot of federal government support. So CHIPS Act, IRA, some of these other incentive programs at the federal level was driving a lot of business development efforts. Once the administration changed in November, all of those projects were kind of put on hold. So the fact that we are still able to hit our target means that Arizona is definitely on the map for a lot of these big companies, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that's the case. Also, 28% of our deal flow is international, FDI, foreign direct investment companies that are looking to move into the United States. That is our high watermark as an organization. Historically, we're at 10 to 15% every year. Ever since 2020, when TSMC and Intel made their announcements, that number's been closer to 15 or 20%. As you can see, we're going to close out closer to 30% of our overall deal flow pipeline being international companies. What's driving a lot of that is the semiconductor industry. So you got TSMC, Intel, Amkor, NatCast are the four major investments in semiconductor here in the greater Phoenix area. We would make the argument, and we're paid to make this argument, that we are the top semiconductor manufacturing location in the U.S. We also have LG Energy Solutions. Those that live in the Southeast Valley, have been out in the Southeast Valley, you see that building go up in Queen Creek. That is an EV battery manufacturing facility, $5 billion. So there's a lot of Korean supply chain companies that are moving to support them. So that's what's really driving a lot of our business attraction efforts. The next question people ask us all the time, so what's tariff policy? How's that going to impact your work? We're still trying to figure it out because the tariff policy changes every other week, it seems like. But so far, people are still interested, depending. What we have that other markets don't have are these big users that have major presence here that are continuing to move forward. Go back to the wage conversation we had a couple times. If you look at about 40 companies move here, you can see the capital investment and the job potential, but those companies that are moving here are almost paying, six-figure wages. 95,000 is their average wage. Meaning, once we pull that data point, a couple of years down the road, when all that comes through, we should kind of flip and be again outpacing the national average. This is just a snapshot in time of our overall pipeline. So give or take 200 projects that are actively looking at the market. They all land here, which we know they won't. This is the capital investment, the jobs, and the square footage potential. And again, this is just looking at office and industrial users. This is a breakdown of that data point in a little bit more context. So what this shows is our office versus industrial. This is square footage. And then this is the number of the projects that are in that square footage potential. Yeah, so as you can see, we're about 80% industrial, 20% office. Prior to COVID, that was like a 60-40 split, 60% industrial, 40% office. There is still this, trying to understand the return to work situation for these office users. Our hope is we get more of these office users that continue to come back, but we still haven't seen it hit the pipeline just yet. And those office projects tend to be the smaller side, less than 25,000 feet.
You had a lot of your major banks and all these other guys say, "Oh, come back to the office," and then they all went, "Wait, we got rid of that space that we leased, so we need to do that again." So there's a bit of a lag behind it.
There's definitely lag on the office, and what we're now finally starting to get back is the RFI from, hey, this is a financial services company, they're looking to do a back office center, and they're looking at Phoenix and Dallas and Kansas City, and then we pop champagne that we just got the RFI because that hasn't come through in so much longer. So it'll be here, but it's still heavily on the industrial side. Now, if you look at the industrial side, again, almost 80% of our overall deal flow are these industrial users. They're all across the board. We have these big 200,000 plus users. If we break that down even and have 500,000, even 1 million square foot plus, those are back in the market. At one time, not so recently, we had about 7 to 8 1 million square foot buildings that were just sitting there empty in the West Valley. I think we're now down to 3, and leases are out on some of those buildings. Meaning that we're now leasing up those big box spaces Now we're pushing the real estate community and the development community. Let's go build some spec industrial out in the West Valley. To make some motion. Yeah.
1 million square foot ones are wrong.
They're so again, it wasn't that long ago. We had a bunch on the market. There's a lot of questions.
So how's this affecting our sprawl? Like for years, we could only put Intel or something like that into a commercial zoning or a industrial zoning, and now we've got like Amcor in Northwest Peoria in a residential neighborhood, like the first time ever. I mean, how's that going to affect the schools, the residents that live out there, and our values?
That is a really good question.
How are they going into a residential neighborhood as well out here?
So Amcor in particular, and not to touch on a specific project, but that land was zoned for commercial. So that was zoned for that use.
Was it changed for them?
No.
So it's been that way for a while.
Yep.
Yes.
But is this a category of industrial versus multi-unit? It's the same zoning?
I don't want to
Yeah.
speak specifically on that project and speak out of school on that.
Well, I've dealt with the Arizona State Land Commission. Just to refresh everybody's mind, is that when the state land is sold for educational purposes, that's their charter.
Right.
Then automatically the state turns into light industrial zoning. That's why Mac and those people do not have to go through a rezoning in the cities that they are incorporated with, is because that Arizona state gives them that zoning. So in that usage of light industrial, there is no rezoning. The zoning is in place. So that's why you see communities coming in together like Mac properties, and they say, this impacts residential. Yes, it does impact residential, but the cities cannot rezone it just for their own sake. They have that zoning in place by the state. And that's what happens with those kind of situations. The cities don't have really much recourse if they don't really like that type of development, because the state has passed that along to the buyer of those properties.
I would answer your question more broadly in this way. I mean, where Intel went was in the middle of nowhere. Ocotillo was not there when Intel went there. They were the first ones there, and they purposely went there, right next to the Native American community, to be on their land. What happened over the decades since the late 70s when Intel went there was massive growth of residential, other commercial uses, and now the Price Road corridor, arguably, is the highest and best employment use in the West Coast. And that was driven by one industrial development that now spurred all that additional growth. If you go down to where Intel is to where we are today, and just look at the economic impact of that, that's pretty significant.
Wouldn't you say the Taiwan Semi is going to have the same effect that they had?
100%, absolutely. Now, I think what you're trying to get at is how do we deal with sprawl, and how do we ensure that we continue to grow and have citizens be happy about where they're living? Going back to the earlier question, this is very much a local issue. Every city has a general plan. Every city has zoning of what's in place, and they have their idea of the future of where they want to grow. If you were in Chandler's 90% built out, if not more. So they are not going to have this huge growth curve in the next 10, 20 years. They already did that. Buckeye is 10% built out. So totally different stories of where are we going to grow, where are our key employment corridors, where are our key residential corridors. Maybe the pushback to all of you and then your clients, and if people have questions like that, call your local city council member, have your voice heard. You are a citizen of your community. You need to have an active voice at the local level. But every city has their own vision of what they want to see, their community.
Thomas, just to add to that, I've seen some research that suggests Taiwan Semi's impact on non-basic jobs is more than double of what the national average is. If you have a basic job, a factory job where that revenue flows in from outside the city, or in other words, what they sell leaves the city. that'll have a multiplier effect of about 5 non-basic jobs at Starbucks and at the retailers. And in that area, the tech core area, I've seen research that shows it's above 11 non-basic jobs. For every factory job that is coming in for Taiwan STEM, there's 11 non-basic jobs that are going to be in that area. So I worked at Intel for years, and it was goat farms and cotton fields down there in Chandler. Now it's tens of thousands of homes.
Totally.
And that they chose to build around basically a factory, factory jobs that back then were $60,000 to $120,000 a year, and everybody could buy, a second car, vacations, fun, education, and so that's what's going to happen up there, like what happened down in Chandler. We're seeing it again because Taiwan Semi. One of the reasons they chose us is because we had 5,500 acres of land owned by one owner, Illinois State land, right next to a population of 5 million people, where there were already 18 semiconductor manufacturers building chips here in Phoenix.
Exactly. What do you think?
Just want to give him the mic.
With no seismic activity, next to a world-class university. So people say, why did they come to Arizona? You're like, well, when you put all that together, like, why not? Why didn't they? Of course they did. And we have GPEC. There we go. Boom. Check is in the mail. Yeah, go ahead. Back there. Yeah.
How is the GPEC dealing with opportunity zones? What's the status?
We are hearing that there's going to be news and updates on revamping that opportunity zone program. When it first came out, and I can't remember when that was, maybe 8 years ago or something like that, there was a lot of buzz of this is going to be a game changer economic development tool. And I think in some markets it was. In Arizona, there's definitely a lot of movement on that, but the opportunity zones tended to be not fully, but tended to be more of your kind of downtown high-rise, residential developments, which are very important. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like we saw, 20 new economic development job creators that were purely being driven by the opportunity zone status. Our opinion on it is if we want to have more federal support to drive investment into the United States, absolutely, we're all for it. We heard that there's been going to be some updates happening, but I don't know if they've come through just yet.
What's your relationship with the Arizona Commerce Authority? Do you work kind of hand in hand with them? Do you work what's your relationship?
Yeah, great question. So ACA, in the economic development landscape, there's 3 different levels. So ACA, Arizona Commerce Authority, is a state level economic development agency. They're purely funded by the state legislator. Their board is a mix up of public-private, like GPEC's board is. GPEC is the regional group. Tucson has their own regional group. There's one up in northern Arizona, so we're kind of that next tier down. And like I mentioned earlier, every community, city has their own economic development. We work very closely with them. We're probably on the call. I was on the call with them earlier today, probably once a day. We're talking to them. We are very much tag teaming a lot of these projects, working it from different angles. There's the state entity. They have access to the economic incentive programs. A lot of times we'll go to these major conferences and we'll have one big brand. It's Arizona's booth, but within Arizona, all these other entities, including GPEC, are there, which makes sense. That way we can kind of pool our resources. But we don't have a financial relationship with them. They don't fund us and we don't fund them. In other states, folks like GPEC and ACA, our equivalents would have a little bit more of a formal financial relationship, which we don't, but we work very, very closely with them. Some of our board members, align and we can't do what we do without them. And I think they would say the same thing. And we're all in this together. Maybe just 2 more highlights on the, the operation type there to the left. Again, so from the industrial side, it's as you can see, a lot of manufacturing, light manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We do have a lot of that warehouse distribution. That tends to be more of those West Valley kind of communities. People want to get on I-10 and go to the Port of LA and Long Beach and back. Data centers. There's a lot of data centers in our market. As you're reading the news, that's become the new hot topic issue in economic development, which we can talk about if you want. But yeah, there's a good mix. We like this. It's a good mix of the types of projects that are looking here. And then this is my last slide, and I'm gonna happy to open it up to any additional questions. Maybe not logos that you recognize, but we wanted to include them. So again, what makes the headlines from the economic development perspective are all the ones that should be. It's the Intel's, TSMC's that we've talked about, LG Energy Solutions, just down the road, ASM, ASML, Amcor, all these major, semiconductor manufacturing fabs are making millions and millions, if not billion-dollar investments in our community. But most of our projects are these groups you've never heard of. And if you look at the jobs that they're bringing, they're in that, maybe it's as low as 50 jobs to a couple hundred jobs. So this is just a snapshot, probably the last 30, 45 days of deals that have located in our market. Where did I put my clicker? Maybe I put it in my pocket. That's what it is. I wanted to highlight some things. That Bush vacuum right there in the top, that's another semiconductor supply chain. We've helped, to your point earlier, of the downstream effect of these big semiconductors. We've had 40 companies that have made their announcement that they're in the semiconductor industry that are moving to Arizona over the last, since 2020, since the TSMC and Intel announcements. They're one of them. Intor on that bottom in Casa Grande, they are supply chain for LG in the battery supply chain space. So we're going to see a lot more movement in that space. Freebird, they're a steel kind of manufacturing, a little bit more heavy industrial going to Eloy. So, I mentioned earlier that Pinal, we represent all of Maricopa County and Pinal County. Pinal County officially joined 2 years ago, and that was on purpose because we know where the growth is happening in our market. Pinal County is going to be a major driver, not only for population growth, but as we're starting to see, some economic development growth as well. Yeah. That's where a lot of it's going. Yes, sir.
What percentage of your employees are relocating into the valley versus hiring locally? The unemployment rate is so low.
Yeah.
Where are they finding their workers?
Yeah, every company has a different answer on that end. Typically, most companies will at least have some of the leadership team or executive team that will come out to start the operation. Or it's the key leader where their current geography is, and now they're getting a promotion to be the head of the Arizona office. But I would say most of where they're hiring are local talents. That's pretty consistent across the board. Obviously, the higher skilled positions that you get, you would probably have to import that from other markets. But most of the time, the majority of what they're hiring is local. Now, to your point, we go pitch a client and brag about all these great investments that we've helped recruit here, and TSMC's hiring thousands of people, and Intel. Fair point for the companies to be like, well, great, then who are we going to hire? So we have another slide that's not on this deck, but it shows that population growth. Again, where we are today, where we're going in the next 10 years, we have this map with an arrow of all the different states of where people are moving from. So California is our number one, market in terms of not only recruiting companies, but recruiting people. And the other thing that they ask, okay, but these are all just 65 and older retirees that are moving here. And then we have that slide that breaks it down. The majority of the people that are moving here are either working age population or families.
That map on your website?
No, but I can send it as a follow-up if you want to put it up. It's really powerful because it tells the story that there are people moving here. There are working age people moving here. And more importantly, for that 10, 20, 30 years down the road, there's families that are moving here. That'll be hopefully the workforce of the future. Yes, sir.
What is GPEC doing to assist the under 13 counties in the state of Arizona? Oh, there were some huge projects planned.
Yeah.
How are you helping us get that?
Yeah, so for the other counties, kind of the non-Greater Phoenix metro, we are geographically restricted to metropolitan Phoenix. Now, at the same time, the economic development community, we're all in this together. We are very fortunate to have a big budget and a big staff. We've been around for a long time, so we work very, very closely and collaboratively with our partners in Tucson and Flagstaff and even the rural locations. But we can't. I guess our board of directors and our members are paying us to drive investment into the Greater Phoenix area, so we can't directly offer services to Kingman, let's say. Because the mayors here would be like, why are you guys helping them out with paying you to help us out? But we're not going to leave them in the dust. We're here to help. We're all in this together. That's what more likely the Arizona Commerce Authority, ACA, they would have a more formal purview over those other counties.
So thank you for getting Dutch Brothers to move here.
Yes.
I know you handled that personally.
Personally. Well, my wife goes every morning to the Dutch Bros drive-through. So I think that's really what drove them, is they had the key customer base here. Yeah, that's on that point. That's a great. Again, we talk about all this industrial, but it's great to see this corporate HQ type users coming into the valley. We love to see that. And we'll go here and there.
Do you have any information that hasn't been announced that you're excited about that will be announced soon?
It's project whatever, and here's the company name. Here's what they're doing. The answer is yes. I mean, a lot of these economic development projects, as you know, are under this cloud of secrecy, and a lot of that is driven by companies sometimes are shutting down a facility in their X market. They're bringing those jobs to Arizona, so they don't want their employees to read the Phoenix Business Journal that my company's moving to Arizona and shutting down the world. So that's the method to the madness of why economic developers are so coy. What are you talking about? So that's also, if they're publicly traded companies and they have to give the public disclosures, there's a lot of sensitivities there that they can't tip their hand. So the answer is yes. We can't really talk about it specifically, but in general, what we're excited about is that there's been this renaissance of manufacturing back into the United States, which is great. And it's not just semiconductors. Semiconductor is the biggest headline grabber because they're the biggest investments, and we've, again, been the best state at that. But kind of the next tier down, we already talked about batteries. We talked about this whole energy transition that we're going as a nation. SRP and APS are going to double their load growth in the next 10 years. That means we need to add more power plants, more transmission lines. That entire industry is growing, and we're going to attract some users that are in that industry, which is really exciting. And then the bio, life sciences, pharmaceutical space is the next thing that's going to kick off. Just like what COVID did exposed that, one, we're not making our toilet paper fast enough, so we're going to hoard all of that. That's the same domino that did, well, shoot, we're not making our advanced chips in the United States, so that we need to have the CHIPS Act to induce that back into the United States. Biopharmaceuticals is the next industry that's in that exact same boat. So we will see that industry come back to the United States, and we're very active to try to ensure that Arizona gets our fair share of our wins in that industry. We'll go here and then back there.
I just wanted to know if you'd seen any new trends with Canadian business owners, because we had some trends with residential.
In a negative way, probably. Yeah. So Canada is always also a map that is not in this slide, but it's right on the top of my head, which doesn't help you guys. I talked about our foreign direct investment, FDI numbers, highest it's ever been. Canada has always been our #1 market of companies investing into the into Arizona. It makes sense. Proximity, all these Canadians that live here want to bring their companies here. This year they are technically still #1, but if you group together Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia is definitely overtaking Canada in terms of an investment. We were there, funny enough, for a conference probably 3 weeks ago to try to talk to all these Canadian tech companies that are coming to Arizona. We were curious to see what the sentiment was. I mean, what's happening now is not great for that. There's still this kind of anti-America sentiment for sure, and I think that is going to have some downstream effects of business attraction. I do think at the same time, there are going to be companies that are going to want to establish a presence in the U.S. regardless. And even if there wasn't, issues on tariffs, and I mean, that was a trend that we've always seen, that they maybe are still a Canadian HQ'd company, but they need to have some type of U.S. outpost. So glass half full will still have a little bit of that. From a business standpoint, there's a little bit of less of the emotional connection. It's more of a business decision. We need to do this to solve a business need. Whereas I would imagine, the Canadians that feel offended, they're saying, well, we're not going to we wanted to buy a home in Scottsdale, but now with all this uncertainty, we're not going to do it. The emotional aspect, I think, impacts the residential more than commercial. We'll go here and then there.
I was just on a call with retail people in Los Angeles, and they said that a lot of retailers are trying to get out of the lease because offices are closing down. Do you guys farm places like that? Just saw where a California firm just bought a high-rise downtown.
Yeah, Kenco. Or no, what was that? The answer is yes. We do a lot of direct outreach to, all across the United States, and California is our number one. We try to be less, like as an example, when there was the wildfires that were there, we're not going to call and saying, hey, come to Arizona. There's a little bit more of an ethical concern on that. However, I mean, to be fair, like people are saying, this is an opportunity. Like these people are trying to, ensure that their homes are still there and their families are still safe. So that's not the time. People, same argument, like, oh, the hurricane hit Florida, let's go talk to them. Like, no, that's not how we should be doing things. But absolutely, we reach out to California companies. Hey, can we put together a tax comparison, both on the individual level and the corporate level, and tell you all about, and it's once we get those, conversations started, as you would imagine, our success rate is pretty high. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, sir.
The Canadian influx has obviously been dampened as far as the residential side, but as far as the Canadian investment into U.S., don't you feel that it probably increase as far as the manufacturing side, mainly because it's a business decision rather than a presidential decision? Because for them, because the U.S. is their biggest market anyway, and if they're forced to kind of do their manufacturing here, they're going to have to break, despite what the Canadian government wants the Canadian companies to do. If their market is here in the United States, then the economic decision is definitely towards coming here and moving some of their manufacturing. I haven't seen so much of a slowdown in Canadian government, contract-wise, as far as residential. Residential is pausing right now, but it seems like the Canadian companies actually seem to have a little bit more activity as far as looking at what as far as moving there. Of course, they're fighting against the Canadian government because the Canadian government doesn't want them necessarily moving out of the country.
I agree. And if you look at our numbers, again, Canada's still the number one market if you just look at it by a country basis. So we agree, and we hope that continues to be the case. But I think we have to move on. But I'll stick around and happy to answer more.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That we greatly appreciate that you were able to join us here. David, are you going to come up? All right. Give Thomas a big round of applause. Thank you one more time. Great information as always. Greatly appreciate it, and would love to have those additional maps you were talking about. That'd be awesome.